Who's winning this case?
Jesse, I think on balance, the prosecution seems to have the upper hand. They can't identify the murder weapon, but I do think the prosecution is putting forth a fairly solid case.
What makes you think that? Because if you ask me, I think it's that surveillance footage, right? So there's this surveillance footage of YNW Melly leaving the recording studio on the night of the murders. He gets into this car, this Jeep Compass. The two victims are in the car as well. And then prosecutors say that if you look at particularly the cell phone data, he's with them 15 minutes before Henry goes to the hospital with the victims in the car. And by the way, there was a .40 caliber shell casing found in that car. Prosecutors want to suggest it was actually found near where Demons was sitting.
There's no evidence of this alleged drive-by. There's no evidence that ever happened.
Based on the information, you can't really tell the court precisely which locations these phones are following, can you?
One of the limitations of cellular analysis is that you can only say a general area where the device would be at a given time.
All right. So even with the general analysis, all of the stuff that we've gone through for about 4 or 5 hours, at the end of the day, you can never give an exact location.
True.
And could you tell if somebody was walking around a car with the phone? Would you be able to tell that?
No.
So it'd be your testimony that this phone, 9807, could be from here to here, correct?
Yes.
And what was the distance?
So going to item number 22, the swab from the Gucci sandals. We're able to compare the profile from Mr. Demons as opposed to the profile developed from those sandals.
I did, and he was excluded.
The stain on the front of the t-shirt, item number 23, we're able to compare Mr. Demons' profile to that.
I did a comparison, and he was again excluded.
What about item number 24, the cutting of the stain of the rear of the t-shirt?
After comparisons were done, he was excluded.
Okay, then on item number 25, the swab of stain from the Air Jordans.
Again, an exclusion.
Going on to item number 26, the swab from the yellow jacket.
An exclusion as well.
And in terms of the item number 27 and 28, the swabs at the Gatorade bottles. What were the results on that?
Those were both exclusions.
So what you're also going to find out is while Mr. Demons is out there on the side of the road, 4 in the morning, 4:42 specifically, he sends a drop pin, digital homing beacon, to his current location, to one of his friends, Frederick Givens. Frederick Givens is also involved in the music industry, and he asked to be picked up. Frederick Givens, then about 11 minutes later, is sent another drop pin where Mr. Demons has moved a couple of meters. What you're going to find out as well, though, is these digital leashes, they have more than just phone calls.
From the day one, I believe that Melly was responsible for my son on October 26th when I first heard the story, because his explanation when I finally talked to him in Cortland on a FaceTime, their response and how they was reacting, they showed no remorse. They didn't act like they was grieving, like they lost a best friend or nothing. They was, in my opinion, they was in the best spirits. They wasn't reacting to, they act like they didn't have to take a loss at all. That's how I took it. And then when I was talking to them, I still had in the back of my mind that something's not right.
Why not?
So the first thing is I didn't have a firearm, so I can't know which firearm I'm going to use in order to replicate any of my tests. So I can't make tests for this determination because I don't know what was used.
Okay. Do you have a...
Can you state your name, your full legal name for the jury?
I'm Leon Phillips.
Okay. And are you related to one of the victims in this case?
Yes, I am.
How so?
I'm his mother.
And who is that?
Christopher Thomas.
Pause it at 2:19:15.
Ms. Phillips, did you see who entered into the occupants who entered into that gray Jeep?
Mm-hmm.
And is that a yes?
Yes.
Do you recognize where your son entered that gray Jeep?
Yes.
Which seat, if you can identify for the jury?
He got in the back seat on the right hand side.
Did you recognize the individual that got into the back seat on the left side, the rear driver's side?
Yes.
And who was that individual?
Janelle.
And Jamel, is that the defendant?
And they would quickly get checked. That happened to those two kids. I don't know how old they are. Those two guys that were claiming money, the Island Boys, with the fun haircut.
Okay.
Yeah, they were claiming to be members of, which is a set of, and they quickly got checked by almost every that could find them on social media. They got fined, and they then had to recant and apologize.
Did you find any evidence whatsoever of any recanting or apologizing by Mr. Devins in the records that you reviewed?
There's no recanting, there's no apologizing, there's no one calling out Mr. Devins for being a fake.
Now, Melly's defense is now entering into cross-examination of Danny Polo. And what Danny is admitting on the stand, now Danny Polo had admitted that YNW Melly was actually being recruited by two different sets. And based off of the text message thread between the different individuals trying to recruit Melly, Melly was not replying. Melly stated weeks later that he was so busy doing radio interviews and shows that he just didn't have time to reply. And if you go back and read the text messages, those recruiters were basically begging Melly to reply back. And he didn't. Because Melly was an up-and-coming rapper who had a ton of money and ambition, and any of these different groups would love to have him under their roster. Because Melly wasn't interested in being a he was being labeled as somebody who was false flagging. It's possible that it was Shine that did the drive, all because Melly didn't want to be a part of their group.
The YNW Melly case has been nothing if not interesting from the get-go. There's been plenty of unanticipated twists and turns that have been brought forward by those close to the case on both sides of the matter. The defense is doing everything possible to say that YNW Melly is innocent, while the prosecution is doing everything to show that Melly killed two people that he was close to. We're into the second full week of the trial and things continue to get weird, with questions about gang affiliation, guns, and DNA evidence being a focal point for many. We'll break it down for you, but first be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an upload from us. Do you want the chance to win a brand new iPhone 14 Pro Max, MacBook Pro, or a $500 Amazon gift card? Find the hidden message that's in the video, comment it down below, and subscribe to the channel for a chance to win one of these amazing prizes. Don't forget to hit the like button, and good luck! And with that being said, let's get straight into the video. Gang affiliation, Young Thug, French Montana, and several other rappers were named in text read in court during the YNW Melly trial to prove the Florida native was affiliated with the Bloods gang. This is something that the prosecution has been trying to do since the trial began. Prosecutors accused Melly of being associated with the Bloods and explained that this was the alleged motive for the murder of his two friends, Christopher YNW Juvie Thomas Jr. and Anthony YNW Sackchaser Williams. Detective Danny Polo explained that gang members use rappers to bring in money and fame, and in return give support so they can get into certain venues. He then read out multiple text messages sent between GBK gang members Goon and Hook. He then read out multiple text messages sent between GBK gang members Goon and Herc to young Sackchaser Howard that mentioned Young Thug, Uzi Badass, French Montana, Jewel Santana, Quando Rondo, and more. The prosecution obtained 123 text messages to help prove that Melly was a member of the Bloods. According to reporter Bryson Pohl, Detective Polo alleged that Jules is an active Bloods gang member based on a text thread with Goon, but couldn't confirm or deny if Montana was also a part of the gang. Another text thread, "Your beloved was set," is at Young Thug pushing now, and also added that Quando Rondo quote lame ass hated on a previous message. Detective Polo also believed that YNW Melly was being recruited by two different G-Shine Blood gang members based on text message conversations of Gino and Herc. Also, a text GBK member Goon sent Melly hours after the murders of YNW Juvie and Sackchaser that read, "You straight? I just heard what happened last night," was also read in court. Now, as the defense team noted, just because Melly did gang signs all the time, as many pictures showed, or had friends who were Bloods, doesn't mean that he was one himself. That is very true, as association doesn't necessarily mean you're a part of a crew. However, the detective in question is correct in that these are plenty of rappers who use their musical status to help gangs get influence or access to places they couldn't get on their own. Many rappers use their songs to help the gang too in exchange for influence, and the gang helping them make money. If the prosecution can further tie Melly to the gangs and establish why it might be a motive for murder, then they might have something big on their hands. But until then, it's all circumstantial, a reoccurring theme in this trial so far. The gun text. Christine Bradley, who is the prosecutor for the state of Florida, showed a set of text messages to the court on Friday that were allegedly sent between the rapper and his mother months before the murders of his two victims. The text revealed that the rapper asked his mother for a gun back in August 2018, just 2 months before Thomas and Williams were killed in October 2018. "Get me a Glock ASAP," read one of the texts. "Like go now. I just don't want no illegal gun." The prosecution claimed that YNW Melly asked for the gun because a dispute arose between YNW Sack Chaser's mother and sister, but it's unclear whether YNW Melly was also involved in the dispute, or whether he wanted the gun for the benefit of the parties involved in a dispute. While a Broward County Sheriff's Office ballistics expert, George Bello, previously testified that a .40 caliber shotgun was used to kill YNW Sack Chaser and YNW Juvie, the defense has claimed that the texts weren't from Melly's phone, and that the gun involved in the murders didn't belong to the Murder on My Mind rapper. What's more, YNW Melly ultimately settled for a Glock 40 or 19, per the text messages, but it's unclear which of the guns, if any, he actually acquired. But the fact that he was asking for a gun at all should give the jury pause. Plus, he noted he didn't want an illegal gun. That's oddly specific, as that seems to indicate that he might be caught with the gun and have to explain it. While it may be hard for the prosecution to prove that things went down exactly as the text shows, the fact that they have those texts at all were a big deal, and definitely put the defense on the back foot. But then again, there are some people claiming that it's the prosecution that's on the back foot, because they haven't shown certain key pieces of evidence that would definitely put Melly behind bars. Gunshot wounds. During the second week of Florida rapper YNW Melly's trial for the two murders of his fellow YNW collective rappers, the prosecution started to focus on the fatal wounds. Assistant State Attorney Christine Bradley called Dr. Rebecca M. McDougal and Dr. Adrian Potter, the pathologist who performed the victims' autopsies, to the stand on Tuesday. Bradley said the direction of the gunshot wounds showed demons fatally shot Christopher Juvie Thomas Jr. and Anthony Sack Chaser Williams on October 26, 2018 in Broward. McDougal said she performed Williams' autopsy. "There's no way for me to tell you what the time frame between wounds was," McDougal said. Bradley had argued that the left to right direction of some of the gunshot wounds would contradict the allegations that they had been the victim of a drive-by shooting. McDougal said she did find that one of the projectiles entered the left side of Williams' neck, traveled through his brain, and exited through the top right of his head. McDougal said this left to right shot was fatal. The jury had already seen surveillance video showing that when they left the New Era recording studio in Fort Lauderdale, Williams was in the front passenger seat of the Jeep Compass, Demons was in the left rear seat, and Thomas was in the right rear seat. Sauter said she performed Thomas's autopsy. She said Thomas also suffered a fatal shot to the head, and the entrance wound was on his left cheek, and the path was from left to right. The heart was not beating at the time this wound was inflicted, Sauter said about one of the gunshot wounds Thomas suffered. The video also shows Cortland Bortland Henry driving the gray Jeep. Another video shows Henry arriving at Memorial Miramar Hospital, and Thomas, age 19, and Williams, age 21, were dead inside the Jeep Compass, according to the prosecutors. The jury also saw a video of Henry telling a Miramar detective that they had been the victims of a drive-by shooting. He said the shooting was on Miramar Parkway, and the shooters had fired at the Jeep's passenger side. Detectives reported an expert's bullet trajectory analysis showed the right-to-left path of the bullets that Henry had described did not match the left-to-right pattern of the wounds, according to prosecutors. Jurors also learned that cell phone data showed them on Pines Boulevard and Pembroke Road, in a desolate area where detectives did find evidence of a shooting, according to prosecutors. Bradley said this is where Henry and Demons staged the shooting. So what we have here is a conflict of stories. If Melly and Cortland's tale was correct, then the ballistics for the drive-by would match the wounds, and yet that doesn't appear to be the case at all. Not that this definitively proves the prosecution's case, for reasons we'll get to soon enough, but it does help them show that someone is lying, or seriously misremembering what happened that night, and that can put some serious doubt in the jury's minds. The masked witness. A masked witness took the stand last Thursday to testify in the murder trial of Melly, spooking at least one juror and raising the possibility that the defendant is being deprived of his rights to a fair trial. The witness was Danny Polo, the detective we just talked about and who works undercover. Broward Circuit Judge John Murphy permitted Polo to testify with his face covered because Polo has received death threats from people unrelated to the Demons case. Undercover officers have occasionally been permitted to testify with their faces obscured in other trials. But here's the thing. Melly's side didn't like that the rapper nor the jury couldn't see the face of the officer. The state could have chosen any expert in gangs, the defense lawyer said. They elected to choose one who has threats against his life that don't concern this case, and who's undercover. They've precipitated this problem. In other words, they should have brought in someone else to testify, but instead, they bring in the one person who can have an excuse and wear a mask so that he can't face Melly face to face. The mask also caused problems for one juror, who passed a note to the judge late Thursday morning expressing anxiety over the witness because she once witnessed a crime committed by someone wearing a mask. The judge later said that Polo would take off the mask while delivering testimony, but many online jumped at the notion of a masked witness because of how weird it looked. You can understand both sides of the issue, as a witness shouldn't have to fear death just by testifying. But by hiding the identity of the person, you're not being fair to the person they're testifying against. It's a hard thing to balance for sure. Lack of crucial evidence. So here's the deal. During the most recent day at trial, a tweet went around saying the following. YNW Melly's DNA wasn't found on or in the Jeep where the shooting took place until they recently found it this month on the door handle of the car. There was also no gunfire residue found on YNW Melly. At the crime scene, 40 caliber bullets were recovered, but to this day there's no firearm and evidence known to be the murder weapon. When you hear some of this, you could see why those on Melly's side are excited. This is key evidence that could prove or disprove that he was involved in the murders. There are even rumors that the case could get dismissed because of it. But here's the rub. No one else is reporting this that we could find. Furthermore, some of these statements aren't as simple as they appear. For example, the DNA evidence not being in the car is odd, but not as important as you might think, as there is video evidence of Melly being in the car with Cortland and the victims. Plus, they did find the DNA evidence to prove he was there, so that's all they need. As for the murder weapons, while that is bad that they don't have it, Melly was stated by himself and Cortland to have gotten out of the car after the drive-by they claimed happened to clear his head. That's more than enough time to get rid of a weapon, plus he could have gotten rid of the gunshot residue in multiple ways with the time he had. So let's not rush to conclusions about the case just yet. Until it's dismissed or a jury renders its verdict, things can still go either way. And there you go, everyone. A look at everything that's been happening recently with YNW Melly and where things might go from here. Do you think that this case is about to blow wide open in Melly's favor, or has the little ground he's gotten for himself about to disappear? What do you think will happen as the trial continues on? Let us know in the comments down below. Be sure to subscribe, and we'll see you next time on the channel.